it is important that we now de-escalate the situation, stabilise the region, and get the parties back around the table to negotiate. And I've been speaking with international leaders this morning to that end. So I want to reassure the British public that we're doing everything we can to stabilise the situation, to de-escalate.
Kier Starmer keeps saying de-escalation. He repeats it like a broken record and calls for restraint, diplomacy and dialogue. He warns Trump not to ramp things up, as if a carefully worded tweet could hold back bunker-busting bombs. But here's the brutal truth. No one is listening. Not Trump, not Iran, not even Britain's generals. While Starmer is busy drafting another statement, the world has already moved on. America is striking hard. Iran is reeling. Israel isn't blinking. And Starmer, he's stuck in a corner, mumbling about peace talks that don't exist anymore. And when Lord Dannatt was asked to weigh in, he didn't even need to raise his voice. He just calmly, methodically dismantled everything Starmer thought he stood for. So, what did Dannatt say that was too harsh but so true that Starmer needs to hear it? Let's find out.
What's your analysis of the Prime Minister's rhetoric here, not just today in this statement that he issued at 7:30 this morning, but also this week? It was only on Thursday that the PM was warning Trump not to, quote, ramp up attacks. He also posted on X this notion that Donald Trump wasn't going to do this. And now, of course, he has, Lord Dannatt. I've just spoken to Michael Portillo, the former Defence Secretary, who thinks the Prime Minister's being, well, a little lacklustre in his support of the US.
This is where it all begins. The interviewer politely but very deliberately pins Kier Starmer to the wall. She isn't analysing, she's presenting Starmer's contradictions. His public statements, just days before, warned Trump to de-escalate.
Needed.
Well, my focus is on de-escalating the situation. I accept your challenge that there is a risk of escalation. That's a risk to the region, it's a risk beyond the region, and that's why all our focus has been on de-escalating, getting people back around to negotiate what is a very real threat in relation to the nuclear programme. In relation to the UK, we were not involved in the attack. We were given due notice, as we would expect as close allies to the US, and we have been moving assets to the region to make sure that we're in a position to protect our own interests, our personnel and our assets, and of course those of our allies.
Prime Minister, if Iran attacks the US, that would be an attack on a NATO ally. If they attack bases, etc. in the region, it could trigger Article 5. Are you prepared for that, and would the UK become involved?
Well, I'm not going to speculate about what may happen because all of my focus is on de-escalation.
He posted that Trump wasn't going to strike. And guess what happened? Trump bombed Iran into the Stone Age. That's not just a bad prediction. That's a catastrophic miscalculation by a man who wants to lead the UK through war and peace. Starmer stood in front of the world and told them, relax, Trump's not that crazy. Then Trump launched bunker busters. You can't spin that. It's like confidently saying the Titanic won't sink, then drowning in your arrogance. At this moment, viewers across the country watched Starmer's entire foreign policy credibility deflate like a sad balloon. His so-called principled diplomacy collapsed before a single follow-up question was even asked. This wasn't an analysis. This was the stage being set for a brutal reality check.
Well, I think he's put himself between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, he is very keen to have good relations with Donald Trump. We've seen a lot of effort being put into trade deals and putting the UK into an apparently more favourable position than some of our former EU partners. On the other hand, he clearly doesn't believe that the use of force that the Americans have just demonstrated is the right thing to do. So along with other European leaders, has been calling for restraint and calling for a return to negotiations. Well, I'm afraid the world has moved on rather rapidly. I don't think negotiations in any meaningful form are very likely because the effect of these massive ordnance penetrators has effectively taken the major bargaining chip that Iran had off the table. And I think Iran, if it comes to any form of negotiation, is negotiating for scraps. So the Prime Minister, in a sense, between a rock and a hard place, may have somewhat backed the wrong horse on this one.
Dannatt enters with that calm military tone, but what he delivers is a slow-motion wrecking ball. Starmer, he says, is stuck between a rock and a hard place. Let's translate that. The Prime Minister is paralyzed. He tried to be Trump's buddy for trade deals while also pretending to be a peace-loving diplomat. And what's the result? He backed the wrong horse. That's verbatim, a direct quote. Starmer's entire diplomatic bet just got crushed under the American ordinance. While Trump dropped bombs, Starmer was still clinging to outdated fantasies of talks and negotiations. According to Dannatt, those hopes are now useless because Trump's strikes obliterated Iran's biggest bargaining chip. So, here we have a British Prime Minister who misjudged his allies, misread the battlefield, and ended up stuck, looking both weak and foolish. Dannatt doesn't need to yell. His voice is composed, but every sentence burns Starmer alive. What was supposed to be leadership now looks like amateur hour. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel for more exclusive videos on the groundbreaking changes happening in British politics. Let's continue now.
What happens now? What will your successor in charge of the military be doing now, Lord Dannatt? What conversations will be taking place with regard to the UK's role in this, if it has any?
Well, of course, that's a matter for the Prime Minister of the British government to decide whether we want to take an active role. My own instinct is that we will decide not to do that. So the military focus for now for the UK is to make sure that our force protection measures for those of our citizens and our service personnel in the wider region are as good as they can be. In particular, we've got the sovereign bases in Cyprus, RAF Akrotiri, now had extra aircraft flown there, and I believe the capability is such that we can fly patrols constantly to make sure that that base does not itself come under attack. And then, of course, not so very far away, but heading towards the Indo-Pacific, is the British-led Carrier Strike Group. That is some kind of target as well, so we need to make sure those force protection measures are good. And then, of course, there is the question of a large number of British citizens in the wider region, not the least of which is a very large number who have got rather marooned in Israel. So the government will have to be thinking about non-combat evacuation operations, which themselves are important, but they're difficult and they consume a lot of resources. So I don't think we'll join in an offensive way, but we've got a lot of work to do to make sure British interests, British people are secure in that region.
These lines are perhaps the most humiliating for Starmer, not because he gets directly attacked, but because of what Dannatt doesn't say. When asked what Britain will do now, the response is clear. Nothing offensive, no bold strategy, just protecting assets and preparing to evacuate citizens. Dannatt makes it clear Starmer's UK has no role, no muscle, no plan. The British military is being told to guard bases, fly patrols, and prepare for mass evacuations. That's not a strategy, that's damage control. Britain is just trying to survive the fallout of America's decision while pretending it's partnering on something. This is the global equivalent of showing up to a gunfight with a bucket and mop. The once proud special relationship has turned into Britain playing janitor for America's chaos. And the worst part? It's not by necessity, it's because Starmer failed to position Britain properly before this crisis blew up.
Well, we may not intervene if the Prime Minister listens to his bestie, Lord Hermer, who believes that if we do play a role against Iran, it could violate international law. What's your response to that, Lord Dannatt?
Well, of course, this is the great debating point as to whether what the Israelis have done. Now, they would argue that they're acting in self-defense, but the Americans joining in. Now, you can't make a very strong case that the Americans are defending themselves. But so there is this debate as to whether they have got very close to the line between what is legal internationally and whether they've crossed that line. I think they will argue that Iran posed a wider threat, not just in the Middle East, but in a much wider area as well. And therefore there was an element of preemption for in the interest of wider security and the interests of other nations, that the United States had joined with Israel, not just to protect Israel, but to protect other countries and other people in that wider region. That's what they will argue. But it's going to be an argument that goes on for quite some time. And lawyers like Lord Hermer will Yes, they'll express their point of view for quite some time to come.
Yeah, it might be more difficult for him to argue that point of view if, for instance, Tehran does retaliate at UK military bases.
Indeed. Then, of course, there's the argument as to who sort of shot first, as it were. But
Yeah.
if there was to be an attack on a UK base, well, then that does change the paradigm as far as the UK is concerned. But in answer to your earlier question, I think the UK focus will be on force protection and the protection of our people and our interests, rather than proactively joining in this offensive operation.
Now, the final nail. The debate turns to international law. While Lord Dannatt calmly explains the legal grey areas of America's intervention, what becomes obvious is that Starmer has no clear stance. Instead, he's outsourcing judgment to legal technocrats like Lord Hurd, hoping the law can shield him from having to lead. But what happens if Iran strikes back, especially at a UK base? Dannatt says it clearly, then everything changes. So Starmer isn't leading policy. He's waiting for events to force his hand. That's not leadership. That's cowardice wearing a tie. In simple words, Starmer's future depends on what Iran decides to do. If they retaliate, only then will Britain respond. That's weak. That's reactive. And that tells every global player, including Iran, that Britain under Starmer is not a threat. It's an observer, waiting to be pushed around. So Starmer wanted to be seen as cautious, balanced, and dignified. What he got was exposed, embarrassed, and eviscerated by his contradictions, his silence, and his inability to stand firm. Lord Dannatt didn't just criticize him, he held up a mirror, and what the public saw wasn't a statesman. It was a man pretending to lead while hiding behind vague tweets and diplomatic fluff. This wasn't a debate, this was a demolition, and Starmer never saw the wrecking ball coming. Do you think Starmer needs to stop being the observer? Let us know in the comment section, why is Starmer so scared? What is he scared of? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to get more updates on British politics and how events are changing it. Until the next video, stay tuned.